If you enjoyed this story, please leave a like and subscribe for more cinematic adventures. Thanks for watching. Long before kingdoms rose, before crowns ruled the land, an ancient magic flowed through the world, keeping perfect balance between nature and mankind. Far beyond the northern mountains, hidden from every map and every king, there lay an enchanted forest untouched by time itself. It was no ordinary forest. Every tree, every river, and every creature carried the breath of ancient magic older than memory. At the very heart of the forest stood Castle Briar, a fortress built not to conquer kingdoms, but to protect the greatest secret the world had ever known. Within those ancient walls lived Lyssara, the last guardian of the old magic, a protector whose kindness was as powerful as the magic she commanded. The forest knew her footsteps. The rivers whispered her name, and every living creature welcomed her as their guardian and their queen. Where her hands touched the earth, flowers bloomed. Where her voice echoed through the woods, fear simply disappeared. Deep within the heart of Castle Briar rested the Crystal Heart, the ancient source from which all magic was born. As long as the Crystal Heart remained untouched, the forests flourished, the rivers flowed, and peace endured throughout the land. But beyond the enchanted forest, another kingdom watched in silence, and within its walls, a king's ambition had already begun to awaken. King Aldrin ruled the greatest kingdom in the land. Wise in the eyes of his people, yet deep within his heart, an endless hunger for power had begun to grow. His kingdom prospered with every passing year, yet no victory, no treasure, and no crown could ever satisfy his ambition. Then one evening, an ancient traveler arrived at the royal court, carrying a secret that had been buried for centuries. He spoke of a hidden crystal, older than every kingdom, a source of magic powerful enough to change the fate of the world itself. The moment Aldrin heard those words, desire overcame wisdom, and the Crystal Heart became the only prize he could see. But the ancient traveler offered one final warning. No army had ever entered the enchanted forest and returned unchanged. The forest was protected by an ancient guardian, a sorceress whose power was bound to the very soul of nature itself. Many believed she was only a legend, a spirit created to frighten those who dared seek the forest's greatest secret. Yet legends have a way of hiding the truth, and sometimes the greatest stories begin with a single forgotten name. Ignoring every warning, King Aldrin made his decision. He would claim the Crystal Heart, no matter the cost. By the following sunrise, the king summoned the greatest knight ever to wear the royal crest, a man whose loyalty had never once been questioned. His name was Kale, a warrior admired for his courage, respected for his honor, and trusted above every other knight in the kingdom. The people believed no darkness could ever tempt him, for Kale had devoted his life to justice, duty, and the protection of the innocent. But on that day, the king offered Kale a mission unlike any he had ever faced before. It was not a mission of war, nor a quest for glory, but a journey into a forest where truth itself could no longer be trusted. Before Kale could leave, the king revealed the true purpose of the mission. He was not sent to fight the Guardian, but to earn her trust. The king gave only one command: gain Lyssara's confidence, discover the Crystal Heart, and bring its power back to the crown. Kale accepted the king's command, unaware that this single decision would change the fate of every soul in the kingdom. At dawn the next morning, Kale departed the capital, leaving behind the only life he had ever known. With every mile he traveled, the world grew quieter, until only the whispering forest remained before him. The deeper Kale ventured into the enchanted forest, the more the outside world seemed to disappear behind him. No bird sang, no wind could be heard, only the quiet rhythm of his horse echoed through the ancient woods. Hidden among the trees, countless eyes watched the stranger from the shadows, waiting to discover whether he came in peace or with evil in his heart. As Kale pressed deeper into the forest, the path itself began to vanish, as though the ancient woods were testing the heart of every soul who dared enter. Far away, unseen by Kale, Lyssara had already sensed that a human had entered her sacred forest. For hours, Kale wandered beneath the ancient trees, following no map and no road. Yet somehow, the forest always seemed to lead him exactly where it wanted him to go. Then, without warning, Kale discovered something no outsider had ever expected to find deep within the sacred woods, a place untouched by fear. No walls protected the sanctuary, no soldiers guarded its entrance. Only silence, flowing water, and the quiet beauty of a world that had never known war. Kale lowered his guard for the very first time. In that quiet place, it became difficult to believe that anyone living there could ever be his enemy. But hidden behind the ancient trees, emerald eyes had already been watching him for a very long time. The guardian of the forest had finally found the stranger. Without a single sound, Lyssara stepped out from behind the ancient trees. Calm, fearless, and surrounded by the quiet magic of the forest, she finally stood before the stranger. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The forest itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting to witness the beginning of a story that would change everything. Kale slowly lowered his hand from the hilt of his sword, choosing respect over fear. It was the first decision that earned the guardian's silent attention. Lyssara had met hunters, soldiers, and greedy men before, but never someone who entered her forest carrying patience instead of violence. At last, Lyssara spoke. Her voice was as gentle as the flowing river, yet carried the quiet strength of the ancient forest itself. Instead of asking him to leave, Lyssara turned away and began walking toward the river, silently inviting the stranger to follow. Kale hesitated for only a moment before taking his very first step into her world. The deeper they traveled together, the more Kale realized the forest was nothing like the stories told within the kingdom's walls. It was peaceful, beautiful, and full of life. As the sun slowly descended, they arrived at a forgotten stone bridge, standing untouched above a quiet stream for longer than anyone could remember. For the first time in many years, Lyssara smiled. It was a quiet smile, almost forgotten by time, yet enough to remind the forest that hope still lived within her heart. Neither of them knew it yet, but with every step they shared, trust was quietly replacing fear, and destiny had already begun weaving a bond that would one day be tested by betrayal. As darkness embraced the forest, thousands of glowing spirits awakened, dancing through the trees like tiny stars that had fallen from the heavens to protect the ancient woods. They soon reached the mirror lake, where the water reflected not only the sky above, but the deepest truth hidden within every heart that dared to look. Without speaking a single word, Lyssara touched the surface of the lake, and waves of emerald light spread across the water, revealing memories long forgotten by the forest itself. For the very first time, Kale witnessed magic not as a weapon to be feared, but as a living miracle, beautiful enough to change the heart of even the strongest warrior. Lyssara guided Kale beyond the mirror lake, into a hidden canyon where enormous crystals had grown for thousands of years. Their light had never faded, for they were born from the same ancient magic as the crystal heart itself. Every crystal held the memory of the forest. They shimmered with forgotten voices, ancient songs, and stories carried across countless generations, long before the first kingdom was ever built. Beyond the canyon, a bridge unlike any crafted by human hands stretched across the sky, woven entirely from the living roots of an ancient tree older than history itself. For the first time since entering the forest, Kale laughed. Wonder had replaced fear, and each new step revealed a world far more beautiful than any story he had ever been told. High above the enchanted world, Lyssara finally understood that Kale's heart carried no hatred. And without realizing it, she had begun to trust the very man fate had sent into her life. As the days quietly passed, the enchanted forest no longer felt unfamiliar to Kale. Every sunrise revealed a new wonder, and every path led to another hidden miracle crafted by ancient magic. Lyssara showed him places that no human eyes had ever witnessed. Gardens where the flowers bloomed beneath the moon, and every petal glowed with living light. Beyond the gardens stood the whispering trees, ancient giants whose silver leaves carried the voices of the past whenever the wind gently passed between the branches. Even the creatures of the forest had begun to trust him. One by one, they stepped from the shadows, no longer seeing Kale as a stranger, but as a welcomed guest. Yet far beyond the enchanted forest, King Aldrin waited impatiently. With every passing day, his desire for the crystal heart grew stronger, and so did the darkness within his soul. With every passing day, Kale found himself forgetting the mission that had brought him there. The forest no longer felt like forbidden land. It had quietly begun to feel like home. There were no walls between them anymore. Every conversation lasted longer than the last, and every shared silence spoke more than words ever could. One evening, Lyssara led Kale to a hidden place where the stars seemed close enough to touch, and the sky reflected upon the earth like a dream. For the first time in many years, Lyssara shared the story of her lonely life, and Kale listened without judgment, without fear, and without speaking a single word. Neither of them realized it yet, but somewhere beyond the forest, destiny had already begun preparing the first shadow that would soon fall upon their peaceful world. As trust continued to grow between them, Lyssara decided it was finally time to reveal the greatest responsibility she had carried since the beginning of her life, a secret protected by every generation before her. The ancient gate responded only to the magic of its guardian. As Lyssara raised her hand, the forgotten runes awakened, and the mountain itself slowly opened before them. Beyond the gate stretched a forgotten sanctuary, untouched by time, where waterfalls flowed through crystal caves and every beam of light carried traces of ancient magic. Kale had crossed kingdoms, climbed mountains, and witnessed countless wonders. Yet nothing compared to the breathtaking beauty hidden within that sacred place. Standing at the center of the sanctuary, Lyssara looked toward the deepest chamber ahead. Beyond those ancient walls rested the crystal heart, though Kale had not yet been allowed to see it. Lyssara paused before the ancient doorway and smiled softly. "Not every secret is meant to be revealed at once," she whispered, "for true power belongs only to those who learn patience before curiosity." Instead, she guided him toward another hidden path, one known only to the Guardians, where the oldest trees in the world stretched their branches beyond the clouds themselves. At the summit of the World Tree, the wind carried no sound of war, only the songs of ancient spirits that had watched over the forest since the beginning of time. Kale realized that every place Lyssara showed him carried a lesson. She was not simply revealing the beauty of the forest. She was teaching him why it had always deserved to be protected. Far beyond the enchanted forest, however, another lesson was unfolding. In the halls of Valina, patience had already abandoned King Aldrin, and ambition was beginning to give birth to desperation. Days had turned into weeks, yet Kale had sent no message back to the kingdom. The silence troubled the king, for silence often meant that loyalty had begun to change. Determined to learn the truth, Aldrin secretly dispatched a handful of royal scouts. Their orders were simple: find Kale, and discover what the enchanted forest was hiding. Meanwhile, unaware of the danger drawing closer, Lyssara continued revealing the forgotten wonders of the ancient forest, believing that trust had finally overcome fear. That evening, Lyssara brought Kale to the oldest place in the entire forest, a sacred circle where the first guardians had once gathered beneath the stars. As the stars shone above them, Lyssara spoke of the promise every guardian must make, to protect the crystal heart, even if it meant sacrificing everything they loved. Kale listened in silence, never imagining how deeply those words would soon test his own heart. That sacred promise echoed in Kale's mind long after the stars had faded. For the first time since leaving the kingdom, he questioned whether his loyalty truly belonged to a crown, or to the innocent lives he had come to know within the enchanted forest. Far away, hidden beyond a curtain of waterfalls, Lyssara prepared a place that very few had ever been invited to see. It was a sanctuary reserved only for those she trusted with all her heart. When Kale entered the hidden sanctuary, he realized that no king, no army, and no human kingdom had ever witnessed such breathtaking beauty. It was a place protected not by walls, but by trust itself. For hours they explored the sanctuary together, laughing without fear and speaking as though they had known each other for a lifetime. Even the ancient spirits seemed to rejoice in the friendship growing before their eyes. But beyond the enchanted borders, 6 royal scouts had already reached the edge of the forest. Hidden beneath dark cloaks and traveling in complete silence, they watched the ancient trees, unaware that the forest had already sensed their arrival. Step by step, the royal scouts crossed into the enchanted forest. They moved with caution, believing they had entered unseen, yet every branch, every stream, and every whispering leaf already carried news of their arrival to the ancient magic. Deep within the forest, the ancient spirits became restless. Invisible guardians drifted silently between the trees, watching the strangers with growing concern, knowing that the balance of their world had begun to change. Far from the hidden danger, Lyssara brought Kale to the Garden of Seasons, a place where spring, summer, autumn, and winter existed together, woven into a single enchanted paradise by the oldest magic in the world. There, Lyssara revealed a truth she had never spoken aloud before. The forest was more than her home. It was alive. Every flower, every creature, every river shared a single magical heartbeat that flowed from the crystal heart itself. As Kale listened, he finally understood what was truly at stake. The crystal heart was not simply a source of power. It was the living soul of the enchanted forest. If it were ever taken away, the magic, the creatures, and the beauty surrounding them would slowly fade into silence forever. From that moment on, Kale could no longer see the crystal heart as the king had described it. It was not a weapon to be claimed, nor a treasure to be possessed. It was the heartbeat that kept an entire world alive. High above the forest canopy, hidden among the towering branches, silent guardians watched every movement below. They had protected the sacred forest for centuries, and today, they sensed a darkness unlike any they had known before. Meanwhile, the royal scouts followed broken branches and faint footprints, believing they were hunting a single knight, never realizing they had entered a land where the forest itself could erase every trail they found. That evening, Lyssara led Kale to a place she had never shared with another soul, the Celestial Observatory, where the ancient guardians once read the stars to protect the future of the forest. As Lyssara gazed into the heavens, a single star suddenly vanished from the night sky. The ancient guardians believed such a sign appeared only when peace stood on the edge of its final dawn, and although neither of them understood its meaning, destiny had already begun moving faster than either heart could imagine. The very next morning, the royal scouts discovered traces of ancient magic unlike anything they had ever seen. Though they failed to understand its meaning, they knew they had found the hidden world the king had been searching for. One scout secretly slipped away from the group, riding back toward Valina with news that would awaken the king's greatest ambition. The enchanted forest truly existed. Deep within the sanctuary, Lyssara remained unaware that danger was already racing toward her world. She believed the forest was finally safe, perhaps for the first time in centuries. As evening fell, Kale finally confessed the truth he had carried since entering the forest. He had been sent by the king to search for the crystal heart. For a long moment, Lyssara said nothing. Her heart wanted to believe the man before her, but the memories of countless betrayals whispered that trust could become the greatest wound of all. Kale expected anger, perhaps even exile. Instead, Lyssara saw the truth in his eyes. She realized that the man standing before her was no longer the knight who had entered the forest under the king's command. That morning, Kale made a choice that would change his destiny forever. He swore that no king, no army, and no crown would ever take the crystal heart while he still drew breath. Far beyond the enchanted forest, the returning scout finally reached Valina. Breathless and exhausted, he delivered the news the king had been waiting to hear. The legendary forest was real. The king wasted no time. Before the sun had fully set, messengers rode across the kingdom, summoning every knight, every archer, and every soldier loyal to the crown. As war preparations echoed throughout the kingdom, the enchanted forest grew strangely quiet. The ancient spirits sensed what was coming, and the very trees seemed to mourn the peace that was about to end. Before dawn broke, thousands of royal soldiers marched toward the enchanted forest. Steel armor gleamed beneath the grey sky, while banners of Valina rose above an army determined to claim the crystal heart at any cost. As the army approached, the forest answered. Ancient roots rose from the earth, rivers changed their course, and glowing mist covered every path leading into the sacred woods. Kale rushed to warn Lyssara. There was no more time to hide the truth. The king had chosen war, and the peaceful days they had shared together were coming to an end. Lyssara refused to answer violence with violence. Even now, she believed there was still hope that the king could be persuaded before innocent lives were lost forever. But far beyond the forest, King Aldrin's heart had already chosen its path. He no longer sought peace, only victory. And with a single command, the march became an invasion. At sunrise, the army of Valina reached the edge of the enchanted forest. For a brief moment, both sides stood in silence, as if the world itself held its breath before the first blow was struck. Without warning, King Aldrin gave the order to advance. Thousands of soldiers charged into the sacred woods, believing steel alone could conquer ancient magic. The forest answered instantly. Towering roots erupted from the earth, vines wrapped around shields, and ancient trees awakened to defend the land they had protected for centuries. Chaos spread across the battlefield. Warriors found themselves trapped by living branches, while glowing spirits guided frightened animals away from the fighting before the forest became a battlefield. Watching innocent lives fall on both sides, Lyssara finally stepped onto the battlefield. She raised her hands toward the sky, hoping her magic could stop the bloodshed before hatred consumed everything. Her voice echoed across the valley, calling for peace instead of vengeance. For a single heartbeat, even the swords fell silent. But King Aldrin refused to listen. Blinded by ambition, he believed the crystal heart was within his reach, and no plea for mercy could change his mind. Kale rode between the two armies, desperately begging his king to end the invasion. Yet the man he once served no longer saw a loyal knight, only a traitor. The king raised his sword against Kale. In that single moment, every bond of loyalty was shattered, and Kale chose the forest over the crown he had sworn to protect. The battle erupted once more with greater fury than before. Amid the smoke and chaos, a small group of elite royal soldiers slipped unnoticed toward the sacred crystal chamber, where the fate of the forest awaited. Hidden beneath the battle above, the king's finest warriors entered the sacred crystal chamber. Step by step, they moved toward the ancient light that had protected the forest for countless generations. The crystal heart sensed the darkness surrounding it. Its emerald light pulsed faster, as though warning the forest that its greatest fear was about to become reality. One soldier reached out, and the moment his hand touched the crystal heart, the chamber trembled with a cry that echoed across the entire enchanted forest. The crystal heart was torn from its sacred place. Rivers slowed, flowers withered, and the ancient trees began to lose the magic that had sustained them for centuries. Far away, Lyssara fell to her knees. She felt the forest's pain as if every root, every leaf, and every living soul were breaking inside her own heart. Her sorrow became unbearable. The brilliant emerald light surrounding her slowly darkened, twisting into shadows born from grief rather than hatred. The guardian of the forest disappeared, and in her place rose the Thorn Queen, wrapped in black thorns and crowned by the pain of betrayal. The peaceful forest answered its queen's anguish. Towering thorn walls burst from the earth, swallowing the battlefield beneath endless darkness. Kale searched desperately through the chaos, refusing to believe that the gentle soul he loved had vanished forever. Standing before the Thorn Queen, Kale lowered his sword. For one fragile heartbeat, the Thorn Queen hesitated. Kale stepped closer without fear, reaching out his hand as he whispered the name she had almost forgotten. Lyssara. Deep within the darkness, her heart remembered. Seeing the Thorn Queen hesitate, King Aldrin seized the crystal heart once more. Its stolen power spiraled out of control, tearing the enchanted forest apart as the very sky began to collapse into darkness. Without a second thought, Kale charged forward. He tore the crystal heart from the king's hands, but the king's blade struck deep into his chest. Wounded beyond saving, Kale carried the crystal heart back to its sacred place with his final strength. The moment the crystal heart returned, life flowed back through the enchanted forest. The darkness surrounding Lyssara faded, and she ran to Kale as he fell into her arms. With his final breath, he smiled, knowing the forest would live on. Years later, the enchanted forest flourished once again beneath endless skies of emerald light. At its heart stood a simple stone beneath the ancient world tree, where Lyssara placed a single white flower every spring. Though Kale was gone, his courage lived forever in every leaf, every river, and every heartbeat of the forest he gave his life to save.